So this man over here decided to transition into a woman so that he can avoid going to a man's prison. If for some reason you don't think this is messed up, I don't know what to tell you. In 2016 and 2019, a 31-year-old Adam Graham, who was first a man, attacked and arred 2 women. Adam claimed to have gender issues since the age of 4, but he only started transitioning in 2020 after he was charged. He changed his name from Adam to Isla, and now he's serving time in a women's prison in Scotland. So you're telling me that a man who was charged and found guilty of the RAPE of 2 women was put in a facility filled with women? To me, it's just alarming how no one thought that this would be a safety concern for a woman, especially because of what he was charged with. Someone make it make sense.
I want to talk about one of the worst accidents to ever happen on a film set, because this moment made the final cut of the movie. So this moment's coming from The Wizard of Oz, which already has a whole list of horrible things that happened on set, which is why I made an entire podcast episode about its dark history. In this shot, it looks like the Wicked Witch disappears behind a giant fireball. To do this stunt, the Wicked Witch was supposed to jump on this platform, which would take her underneath the stage so she could jump off the platform, and then the fireball would erupt. But if you watch closely, you can see the timing's off. The platform starts going down before she's on it, meaning that this fireball erupted before she had time to get off the platform. This caused her hat and her head to catch fire, which led to 2nd and 3rd degree burns all over her face and body. But the worst part of all is that this makeup she's wearing is copper-based, meaning that even when they put the fire out on her face, the copper in the makeup was so hot it continued to melt her skin. And the only thing they had on set to take off the makeup and not infect the burns was rubbing alcohol. Some of the cast said that they remembered hearing her screams from below the stage, not because of the fire, but because of the rubbing alcohol that was being scrubbed into her burns. There is way more dark history to The Wizard of Oz, including more toxic makeup, so make sure you listen to the episode to hear more.
Let's talk about 2 Easter eggs in Saw X that you might have missed. Spoilers ahead, you've been warned. While some of the tests are being set up, Gabriella has a moment of desperation when she starts talking to Amanda, one of John Kramer's many apprentices. And she says, John is a monster. He's gonna kill you just like he's gonna kill all of us. Of course, Amanda denies this, but it is a solemn reminder to us, the audience, that John will be the leading cause of Amanda's death in Saw 3. Because Amanda, once again, gets put in another test that she does not pass. And it's especially sad in Saw X because the ultimate reason why Amanda does not survive Saw 3 is because she's not adhering to John's rules. She's creating rigged traps because she doesn't think his way really works. And in this movie, she's not following his way, but in a different way. She wants to try to help Gabriella. Another fun Saw 3 Easter egg in Saw X. While John is in the park, you see him drawing out these sketches of the rack from Saw 3. They even show some gear ratios in here, which is pretty cool. Did you notice both of these?
Morbid Facts, Part 134. In 1985, a 13-year-old Colombian girl named Omaira Sanchez was trapped up to her waist in volcanic mud flow. Knowing she would die, volunteers and rescuers did their best to comfort her. She died after 60 hours, and her photo became iconic. The Deacon St. Lawrence was roasted alive on a giant grill during the persecution of Valerian in 258 AD. Despite the agony, he joked with his tormentors, "Turn me over, I'm done on this side." Today, he's the patron saint of chefs, firefighters, and comedians. In Houston, Texas, a 19-year-old man named Rashad died while attempting to play Russian roulette in front of his friends. He apparently didn't know how the game worked since he tried to use a semi-automatic pistol instead of a revolver. In 1976, a Greek man named Stomatis Moridis was diagnosed with lung cancer and told that he had less than a year to live. But 10 years later, he returned to the doctors to tell them that he was still alive, only to find out that he had outlived all of them. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 102.
Have you guys heard of the haunted house that requires you to sign a 40-page waiver? The McCamey Manor that's located in Somerville, Tennessee is described to be like a torture chamber. But before even stepping into this haunted house, you would need to complete a phone screen, a background check, and sign a 40-page waiver. And then if all that's approved, you'd have to watch a 2-hour video of every person who has attempted to complete the haunted house in the past 2 years. So what exactly makes this haunted house so scary? Well, not only can this experience last up to 10 hours of physical and mental torture, but it's been said that people are waterboarded, forced to eat nasty things, and duct taped. This waiver even states that participants must be okay with workers torturing them however they see fit. Some people claim that they were forced to take a pill that caused them to hallucinate. And apparently it's so bad that they had to seek professional help after they went through the experience. But Russ, who's a founder, says that participants are not being tortured. Rather, they're being put under hypnosis, making them believe that something scary is happening when in reality it's not. What's interesting about this challenge is that participants can win $20,000 if they can withstand the experience, but there has not been a winner so far. What's crazy is that people have petitioned to try and shut down this attraction because of how traumatic it is, but it's still operating till this day. Comment below if you'd participate in this haunted house.
Let's talk about Diego's trap from Saw X. This trap is simple, but very crazy. Diego wakes up and his fists are completely duct taped together and he has this little scalpel sticking out the end of it. But more importantly, he has these metal wires going through the flesh of his arms that are attached to pipe booms, right? And he has to be able to cut the wires out of his skin so he can remove the pipe booms in time. Jigsaw has apparently given up on his 60 seconds thing for now, and he gives Diego a solid 3 minutes to do this. I think it's so screwed up that even his hands are duct taped together in fists, just with little scalpels sticking out of it. Like, I feel like you could have just left his hands unduct taped, and it would still be difficult. Like, why make it even more difficult than it needs to be? But to the audience's surprise, Diego actually makes it out of here. But watching him just jab into his flesh is crazy. But he had the will to live. I gotta give it to him.
Breaking news, a man told authorities that he had decapitated a man as well as a dog. According to the arrest affidavit, authorities were called out around 10:15 p.m. on Friday for a suspicious person after a man was looking into parked vehicles. When officers arrived and approached the man, he said, quote, "I just killed somebody." He said he had taken the life of a man about a mile away from where he was. Authorities immediately went to the location, and when they arrived, they saw blood inside the front door. When they went inside, they saw a deceased dog near the front door. It was then that they went to the living room and found a man deceased without a head. They also described the victim as having, quote, large stomach wound, with his, quote, intestines extruding. Furthermore, authorities say that the dog had similar injuries. Authorities were then able to follow a trail of dried blood, which led them to a severed head in the bathtub. They also stated that there were surveillance cameras in the home, including one that was pointed toward the crime. Authorities are not exactly certain when the crime took place, but they said there are missed notifications on the victim's cell phone dating back to 9:19 a.m. on October 13th. They have also not stated the relationship between the two. The suspect has since been charged with first-degree murder and animal cruelty charges. He's being held on a $1.5 million bond. Not released a motive, but I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
These Black Mirror episodes happened in real life. Black Mirror started with a bang with the pig episode, and a scandal involving a former British Prime Minister is similar in the worst way. In a scandal called Piggate, David Cameron was rumored to put a private part of his anatomy in a pig's mouth as part of a hazing ritual in college. In his defense, he said these allegations were false and ludicrous. Remember in the Joan is Awful episode, the main character found out that when signing the terms of service agreement, when signing up for a streaming service, she actually granted them access to use any recordings from her phone in their content? Well, Google's new AI service is now using anything written in your Google Drive, including docs and emails, to feed its AI. You do have to give user consent, but make sure you're reading those agreements. In fact, scraping user-generated content to feed AI is one of the reasons why Twitter, or X, is now restricted if you don't have an account. Ashley O was a huge pop star, but her Black Mirror episode showed that she was just a performer caught up in the persona of Ashley O. She wanted to quit, but her money-hungry aunt kept the Ashley O machine going with minimal input from Ashley herself. When the episode came out, multiple people brought up similarities between Ashley O and Britney Spears. There have been long-running conspiracies about whether Britney sings her own songs or if there's another woman behind the scenes. And in present day, we now know that she wanted to quit performing long before she actually did because her conservatorship was making her. And I've even seen bizarre theories on this app suggesting that Britney is no longer alive and all the paparazzi sightings and Instagram posts are not actually her. Let me know what you think and follow for more.
Morbid Facts, Part 366. During the 1980s, Rebecca Schaeffer was the star of the popular CBS sitcom My Sister Sam. But in 1989, she was fatally shot in the doorway of her West Hollywood apartment by an obsessed fan who had been stalking her for over 3 years. The 21-year-old's death led to the passing of some of the first anti-stalking laws in America. This devastating photo was taken by Tom Stoddard during the Sudanese famine in 1998. It shows a well-nourished Sudanese man stealing a bag of corn from a starving child after it was given to him by a charity. Here's a photo of the unidentified victims of John Wayne Gacy being laid to rest at a mass funeral. In 2006, 18-year-old Ryan Waller was shot in the face during a Phoenix home invasion. His girlfriend was killed, but Ryan somehow survived. However, police mistakenly treated Ryan as a suspect, not a victim. Despite a severe bullet wound in his head, Ryan was interrogated for hours and denied medical treatment. He eventually passed away as a result of the horrific negligence.
This is the case of 21-year-old Cindy Song and how she vanished after Halloween night. Cindy was born on February 25th, 1990 in South Korea, and she spent most of her childhood there. When she was 15 years old, she decided it was time for a change. She wanted to leave South Korea and move to Virginia in hopes of getting a better education. Her aunt and uncle already lived there, so she moved to Virginia and began this new chapter of her life. Friends and family say that Cindy was extremely independent, hardworking, and just an overall great person. She was really creative. She had this personal page where she would write poems about what she was feeling. She eventually enrolled in Penn State University and she was getting a degree in integrative arts. This was a student-led degree, so you had to be very self-directed and very independent, which Cindy was. Cindy was having an absolutely great time at Penn State University and she was just juggling so much. She was balancing her degree, 2 part-time jobs, and she was in a lot of extracurricular activities, and on top of that, she had a boyfriend. Her boyfriend was named Richard and they were actually living together on an off-campus apartment and things seemed to be going well. However, one day Richard suddenly ended the relationship with Cindy, which of course absolutely broke her heart, and it took her some time to heal from this, but she was starting to get better and she was starting to get happy again. So let's fast forward to Halloween night in 2001. This year, Halloween fell on a Wednesday, and normally Cindy wouldn't go out during the week. You know, she had to go to school, go to work, she just had too much going on, so she didn't like to go out drinking on a weekday. But since it was Halloween, she decided to go out with her 2 friends, Stacy and Lisa. Since this was such a last-minute plan, she didn't have a Halloween costume ready, so she decided to just be a bunny. She grabbed some bunny ears, she grabbed a pink shirt, she put a little tail on her skirt, and that was her costume. She wasn't like a sexy bunny or anything like that. She was just like a cute bunny, and this is actually a photo of her in the costume that she was wearing that night. So Cindy goes out with her friends, they go to a local nightclub, and they're there until about 2 o'clock in the morning. After the nightclub, she goes to a friend's apartment to play some video games, and then at around 4 o'clock in the morning, Cindy decides to go home. Her friend Stacy offers her a ride, and she drives Cindy to her apartment, drops her off, and watches Cindy walk up the steps towards her door. However, she didn't physically see Cindy walk into her apartment. Now the next day, Cindy's roommate Catherine comes home to an empty apartment. She thought this was weird, but the door was locked, so she just assumed that Cindy had gone out and would be home later that day. They actually had plans to go meet up with some friends later, so Catherine waited, but Cindy never showed up. The next day on Friday, Cindy was still missing. Then Saturday came along and there was still no sign of Cindy. Finally, Sunday rolls around, and at this point it's been 4 days since anyone has seen or heard from Cindy. This is when her friends knew that something was wrong, because at this point she had missed work and she had missed school, which is something that Cindy would never do. This is when the friends decided to call 911 and report Cindy as missing. Okay, more in part 2.
In England's legal history, a clear distinction existed between the execution methods assigned to men and women. Men accused of high treason, often involving acts against the monarchy, were subject to hanging, drawing, and quartering, a public and gruesome form of punishment. In contrast, women convicted of similar crimes or petty treason and heresy were subjected to a distinct form of punishment: public burning at the stake. The public burning of women, while different from the execution methods for men, had its own macabre and horrifying aspects. Crowds would gather to witness these events as the convicted women were secured to a stake. Reports from these executions often detailed the anguish and cries of the condemned. In certain cases, executioners would choose to strangle the women prior to the burning to mitigate their suffering. The campaign against the public burning of women culminated in the passage of the Treason Act of 1790.
It's hollow and filled with mole people, sea monsters, and that family from Land of the Lost.
Hollow Earth. Way up!
The reverse bear trap actually works. It actually is a real prop that can rip your face open. So yes, the actress is wearing the real one, but she's not in any danger because in order for it to open, it would need to be hooked up to an air compressor, and it wasn't hooked up to the air compressor while they were filming with it on her. For the razor wire maze in the same movie, all of the razor wire that the guy had to crawl through was made out of little bits of rubber and plastic. It was completely painless. Fun fact, that's why they had to speed up this scene so much so it looked more painful for the actor than it actually was. Then we have the drill bit chair from the same movie. This one's really cool to me. Each drill bit for all the stationary shots are real drill bits, but then when it's actually moving towards his neck, it's replaced with a rubber black piece. It's slightly pointed and they have wrapped around it little pieces of aluminum foil. So that way when it's spinning really fast, it looks like a normal drill bit. And out of view of the camera, they're actually pushing it forward with their hands so they could control how close they wanted to get to his neck. And then Dr. Gordon cutting off his own foot. He was using a real saw blade, but it was a blunt edge. But he sawed a little too hard and he actually did cut his leg for.
The Illuminati was in fact a real group. In 1776 in Bavaria, this man named Adam Weishaupt, he started a secret club called the Illuminati. The whole purpose was to have free thinkers. They could usher in change into culture. How can we make it better? And or how can we gain more control? The Illuminati played a big role in the French Revolution, whispering into people's ears of like, there needs to be a change. It started off with a very small group, recruiting people in Freemason lodges, very rich men. And then people were starting to talk, and like the leader of Bavaria, he's basically like, I'm seeing what's happening in France and stuff. He said, all secret societies are now banned. So that's where they're like, then we won't do the Illuminati anymore. The free thinking came with more power, more control. So we're the ones pulling the strings and everything.
Yeah, we want to control everyone and make sure you guys are being free thinkers.
You will own nothing and be happy.
I told my kids that. They ask about the future, what they're going to inherit from me, and I tell them those exact words. You
will own nothing and be happy.
Exactly.
Her ordeal began when she was condemned as a heretic due to her Protestant beliefs. Anne was subjected to brutal torture within the Tower of London. She was taken to the White Tower, where she was shown the rack, a device used for stretching the human body. Anne still refused to name anyone who shared her beliefs. She was then stripped of her clothing, leaving her in just a shift, and placed on the rack. Her wrists and ankles were fastened, and she was stretched on the rack. Anne endured this torture 3 times, and her cries of pain could be heard by those nearby. Sir Anthony Knevet, the lieutenant of the Tower, ultimately refused to continue the torture and sought a meeting with the king. However, others, including Ryo Theasley and Rich, took over the torture, resulting in Anne's shoulders and hips being pulled from their sockets and her elbows and knees being dislocated. Still, she did not betray her fellow believers. Despite her excruciating injuries, Anne Askew was taken to Smithfield, London, where she was burned at the stake at the young age of 25 on July 16, 1546. She was unable to walk, and every movement caused her immense pain. Anne was fastened to the stake by a chain and suffered a gruesome death.
This is maybe the scariest urban legend I've ever heard, and it ended up being true. Back in the 1970s, there was this terrifying fun house in Long Beach, California called The Laugh in the Dark. And there was always this urban legend that all the mannequins inside were fake, except for one. Also, mind you, this is what this week's episode is about, so if you don't want spoilers, just listen to the episode. This urban legend came to be because there was one mannequin inside that just looked wrong. All of the other ones looked fake, but this one in particular looked way too human. And a bunch of the kids also said the area that the mannequin was in just smelled really, really bad. So a few years go by, and one day a film crew comes in and is using Laugh in the Dark for a film set. The director's lining up a shot, and he just doesn't like the way this one mannequin looks in frame. So he goes over to a crew member and he's like, hey, can you just move this out of the shot? So the crew member goes over and starts moving the mannequin when its arm pops off. And inside of the mannequin's arm is human bone. The kids had been totally right. The mannequin was a mummified body. There's so much more to this story, like who the person was and how they got there, and I talk about the whole thing this week on the episode.
These are some of the oldest things in the world. The oldest known photograph of a person was taken in 1838. It only happened because a man and his shoe shiner were the only people still enough on a busy street to show up in the 10-minute exposure. The earliest known sunglasses were created by Inuit hunters around 2,000 years ago. They were made to shield their eyes from the blinding glare of sunlight that reflected off the snow. Found on an ancient Greek colony along the Nile River, the oldest known pair of socks are 1,600 years old. They're made from red wool and were designed to be worn with sandals. This 3,200-year-old ancient Egyptian tablet is considered to be the oldest attendance sheet in the world. Reasons for workers being absent included brewing beer, embalming brother, and bitten by scorpion. Dating back to 1504, this carved ostrich egg is the oldest known depiction of the New World. The globe shows North America as an unnamed group of scattered islands. There are depictions of ships and monsters, and it even contains the phrase Hic sunt draconis, which literally translates to "Here lies dragons."
This is part 2 on the case of 21-year-old Cindy Song and how she disappeared after Halloween night. Detectives begin the investigation, and they start by going through Cindy's apartment to see if they could find any clues. They first wanted to determine if Cindy had ever even made it inside her apartment, because again, her friend watched her walk up the steps but never saw her go inside. So the first theory people had was that while Cindy was walking to her door, someone approached her and abducted her. However, that theory was quickly ruled out because inside her apartment, detective found items that indicate that Cindy had made it inside. They found her backpack, they found her cell phone, and they also found the false eyelashes that she was wearing that night. However, they weren't able to find her purse, her wallet, her ID, her credit cards, or the clothes that she was wearing that night. So this led investigators to believe that she had made it inside her apartment. She started to get ready for bed, she took off her false eyelashes, but then she decided that she needed to quickly go out. She wanted to go to the store to buy some food and thought it was going to be a quick trip, which is why she didn't even take her cell phone. Then somewhere along the route to the store, Cindy was abducted. However, there were no security cameras at the apartment complex or at any of the local grocery stores that she might have gone to, so there really was no way to prove this theory. Detectives then looked into her friends, but they ultimately cleared them, and they also looked into her ex-boyfriend Richard, but also cleared him. At this point, detectives didn't have that many leads to go off of. Detectives didn't believe that she had ran away because, first of all, she didn't pack any clothes with her, and they also found out that she had ordered a new computer and she had tickets to go see Britney Spears, so they felt like she wouldn't have got those things if she was planning on running away. When Cindy's mom and brother found out about her disappearance, they left South Korea and they flew to Penn State to start looking for her. First, the family thought that maybe Cindy had taken her own life because she was upset about the breakup with her boyfriend and she was just under a lot of stress. However, her friends say that that's just not possible, that she was getting better, she was going to therapy, and she was just so happy. Detectives agreed with the friends. They didn't find any evidence to indicate that Cindy had taken her own life. At this point, pretty much everyone believed that Cindy had been abducted and then murdered. December 5th, 2001, a tip came in from a woman saying that she was in Philadelphia's Chinatown district when she saw a girl who resembled Cindy getting abducted and pushed inside a vehicle. This is a sketch she gave of the man, and detectives did look into this, but they claimed that the tip was false and they confirmed that that was not Cindy. After this, detectives were pretty much back to square one. The case would go cold for the next 2 years, but in June of 2003, detectives received a tip stating that a man named Ugo Selensky was Cindy's killer. Now, Ugo was a convicted murderer, and the person that gave the tip said that Ugo had killed Cindy on the night of Halloween with the help of another man named Michael. Michael and Ugo were driving around the area that night when they saw Cindy walking in her Halloween costume and mistook her for a prostitute. Two of them decided to abduct Cindy, bring her back to Ugo's house, and then they R-worded her before killing her. Then they buried her in his backyard. So detectives listen to this tip and they go to Ugo's house, they dig up the yard, and that's when they come across 12 buried bodies. 12. And one of the bodies belonged to Michael, the man that they claim helped Ugo kill and abduct Cindy. They found 12 bodies, but none of those bodies were Cindy's Song. Since they never found Cindy's body or any type of evidence tying Ugo and Michael to Cindy, he was never arrested or charged for her disappearance. Fortunately, to this day, in 2023, Cindy's Song is still missing. Detectives believe that Ugo was the abductor and killer of Cindy's Song, but they just haven't found any evidence to connect him to it. It really is shocking how someone can just disappear without a trace, and it's crazy how so many years have passed without answers. My thoughts and prayers go out to Cindy's family, and I just hope that one day they do get answers and that Cindy gets justice.
Did archaeologists find proof of time travel when they opened up an ancient Chinese tomb? Watch this and see for yourself, Booshkies!
Within a sealed tomb in Shaanxi, China, which had not been opened for over 400 years, they found a small yet unmistakably modern artifact, a tiny gold watch. This watch, no larger than a ring, was intricately carved with the word Swiss on its back. Given that the tomb dated back to the Ming Dynasty, it was a baffling discovery. How could a piece of 1940s design end up in a tomb that had been undisturbed for 4 centuries?
Could they have had watches 400 years ago? Well, the first ring watch wasn't invented till 1750. And this thing, found in the tomb, was definitely a Swiss ring watch. And I'm pretty sure this guy wasn't wearing it. So the only possibility is a time traveler left it behind. Swiss time travelers going to China. You never know. Shabadoo Bushkis, Shabadoo.
Morbid Sports Facts, Part 3. When former NFL safety Dave Durson took his own life in 2011, he left a note that read, "Please see that my brain is given to the NFL Brain Bank." He shot himself in the chest so that his brain would be preserved, and doctors confirmed that he was suffering from severe CTE as a result of all the head trauma from playing football. In 1989, 96 people were killed during a soccer match at Hillsborough Stadium in England after being crushed to death due to overcrowding, many of whom died while standing up. 22 years later, Stephen Whittle tragically became the 97th victim. He had sold his ticket to a friend who died during the disaster. Unable to cope with the guilt, he took his own life by jumping in front of a train in 2011. At Belmont Park in 1923, a young jockey named Frank Hayes suffered a heart attack and died in the middle of a horse race. His body, however, remained on the saddle throughout the race, and his horse ended up winning, beating the odds of 20-1. Therefore, this was the first time that Hayes had ever won a race, and the last.
This is the diving face split video, one of the most disturbing videos on the internet explained. The video that I'm about to explain was released onto the internet in July 2009, and around September 2009, the video went completely viral. The video shows a group of teenagers having fun on a summer day. The group is taking turns jumping into the sea from an elevated surface, and it looks like the drop is about 20 feet. The first person to jump off dives into the sea completely fine and unharmed. The second teenager is then ready to jump. He stands over the drop, steadies himself, and then jumps, but as he jumps, he kinda loses his footing and completely slips. And immediately, the jumper realizes that he is in deep trouble. In midair, you can hear him panicking as he realizes he didn't clear the clearance he needed to. He then falls into the sea, but his face hits the fishing walkway below, and immediately when this happens, everybody he was with lets out an ear-piercing scream. As the video plays, the victim's unconscious body is floating in the water, and the water around his head immediately turns red. The video then cuts forward and it shows a rescue boat trying to save the jumper, and during this part of the video, the entire sea is completely red with the jumper's blood. The video then jumps again to the victim in the hospital, and at this point you can see the true nature of his injuries. And I'm telling you right now, it's horrible to look at. The victim's face was completely split vertically from the top of his forehead all the way down to his chin. And what makes this even worse is that he's still alive throughout all of this and fully conscious. During this point in the video, you can see the doctor try and hold the victim's face together, and apparently he was doing this to help the victim's breathing, because his face was split in two. Both his nose and mouth were completely destroyed, and as I said already earlier, he was still fully conscious. Despite the injury, another disturbing part about this video is that you can see the victim's eyes darting across the room in complete shock, pain, and panic. One of the doctors can also be translated to saying, "Where do I even start? Where do I even start?" Meaning this injury was so brutal, experienced doctors didn't even have a clue on what to do. The victim then ended up passing away 2 days after this freak accident. I don't recommend you go searching for this video because it's definitely one of the worst accident videos online. This video is absolutely horrific, and may this boy rest in peace.